not necessarily telling your child, we need to do your sensory diet because it makes you feel better.
Yeah.
It's more of like, hey, let's try these activities. Let's go play. Let's do this together.
Connection.
Focusing on that connection piece with these sensory diet activities is possibly the biggest key to helping your child participate in these activities.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica, and this is All Things Sensory by Harkla.
We are both certified occupational therapy assistants, and together with Harkla, we are on a mission to empower parents, therapists, and educators to help raise confident and strong children of all abilities.
On this podcast, we chat about all things sensory, diving into special needs, occupational therapy, parenting, self-care, overall health and wellness, and so much more.
We are here to provide raw, honest, and fun strategies, ideas, and information for parents, therapists, and educators, as well as other professionals to implement into daily life.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. Welcome back to All Things Sensory by Harkla. If you don't know, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica. I hate when you do that.
I know.
We've already introduced ourselves in the intro, but I guess people do skip that often. Don't
Exactly. So if you skipped it and this is your first time ever listening or watching us, then now you know I am Rachel and that is Jessica.
There you go.
And we are All Things Sensory because we like to talk about all things sensory.
Yes.
And more.
And lots more.
Yes.
Today we are going to talk specifically about sensory and sensory diets because we get questions all the time from parents saying that they've identified their child's sensory needs. They know what sensory activities they want their child to participate in based on those sensory needs, but their child won't participate in the sensory diet.
Yes.
So what do we do?
Well, before we were recording, I was just telling Jessica, I'm like, well, my kids won't participate.
Your toddlers.
My toddlers won't participate in a sensory diet either. So I feel this one to my core. And it's tough when you know all the things you want your children to be doing and you know the things that can be beneficial for them.
But your child is like their own little person with their own
Yeah.
desires and
Yeah.
independence and
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe one day we'll get to Logan's status and be able to participate in all the things that we're supposed to.
eventually, right? You'll get there.
Yes.
He's pretty, it's high standards, right?
Yes.
No, I think the main thing here is to remember that a sensory diet doesn't have to be this perfectly curated, sequenced, just right list of sensory activities all the time. A sensory diet is literally anything that you do to help your body feel good, to feel regulated, to feel calm, to feel grounded. It can be as simple as chewing a piece of gum. It can be as simple as going for a walk outside, or it can be as complex as a 5-step obstacle course in the clinic that incorporates all 8 sensory systems and primitive reflexes.
Yeah, there's a wide spectrum for sensory diets.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the trick with sensory diets is that we approach it as play because a child's main occupation is play. It's how they learn. They have fun during play. So if we approach a sensory diet routine as you need to do this, you have to do this, I'm telling you what to do, chances are your child is going to push back.
The more you force your child to do something, the more you say you need to do this or we're not going to do that, the more they will resist. And that's personally what I've found too. If I tell my kids, specifically my older toddler who's almost 4.
Wow, he's almost 4. Oh my God.
It sounds weird saying
That's
that out
wild.
loud. I know. I just had a mini heart attack. Anyways, he's almost 4. Telling him, hey, this is what we're going to do. He's like, no, I'm going to play cars. Like, okay.
But realistically, him getting down on the floor playing cars is part of his sensory diet,
Exactly.
right?
It keeps him regulated. He loves it. He has a great time doing it. But the key of that story is if I get in one of the swings, if I start making an obstacle course, if I start playing and doing these activities, and I like to call it giving them FOMO, which I don't know if that's the most appropriate term, the most appropriate thing, but if I start having a really fun time doing these activities myself and don't even say, hey, come play with me, most of the time, one or both of them will come and join me. And it won't be this perfect curated sensory diet like we love, but it will be more specific activities. I'll give you an example of one thing. So my son, Trip, who's almost 4, like we mentioned, he's a little more gravitationally insecure. He doesn't love being on unsupported swings like a platform swing. So I think it was like January or February, we had a platform swing hung and we were working on laying backwards, throwing the ball into the hoop. And this was like a 15-minute activity that we were just sequencing and starting really slowly. And by the end of the activity, he was laying back, he was grabbing a ball, he was throwing it to a hoop, we were swinging, he was sitting crisscross applesauce on the swing. So it was this really nice, beautiful progression, but it was all child-led, all following his lead with little tiny tweaks with using my expertise to get my outcome, which was to work on that postural control, some reflex integration as well. And so to the average person, it would probably just look like we were playing and swinging and having a good time. But to you, you'd probably be like, oh, I know exactly what she's working on.
Sure.
So there's a great example of following his lead, but also we're just playing and having fun, and he doesn't know that we're actually working on all the things.
Yep. I think there's a couple of things there. One, it's playful. You're doing it with him, which is important, especially for our younger children, but also in the beginning when introducing new sensory activities. Chances are kids really want to hang out with us a lot of the time. And if you can make it playful and fun, chances are you as the adult, the parent, you're also going to have a good time because you're engaging in a positive activity with your child. And you didn't make it in a negative way either. Like, oh no, you have to do this because we need to work on this. You know, you're not necessarily telling your child, we need to do your sensory diet because it makes you feel better.
Yeah.
It's more of like, hey, let's try these activities. Let's go play. Let's do this together.
Connection.
Focusing on that connection piece with these sensory diet activities is possibly the biggest key to helping your child participate in these activities.
Yeah. And so talking about, older kiddos who maybe are more resistant to these activities because they are more aware, or maybe they aren't aware of what they need or what's hard for them, focusing on the activities that they enjoy and they're good at. And really just honing in on those activities first. So they love to log roll, they love to spin, they love to play basketball. So we're using those activities as our sensory diet, and then maybe we can put the basketball on the child's back and see if they can crawl. That'd be really hard.
Oh, that sounds impossible.
And then crawl across the room without it falling off. Obviously, you're going to help them. But, because you're adding in that crawling component that maybe is hard for them or they don't love to do, but you can slowly but surely add those non-preferred activities for them into the sensory diets.
Yep. I think just what you said, starting with the ones that they like, that they enjoy, that they seek out. Their body is seeking out those activities for a reason. So that's what we want to start with. And we call it meeting the sensory threshold. We have another episode where we talk all about how to meet the sensory threshold. It's episode 187. So refer back to that episode because it explains everything. But yeah, you have to start with those activities. And because your child enjoys them, you're not going to feel like you're forcing them to do it. You can say, okay, Johnny, what do we want to play today? Do we want to swing or do we want to jump? Do we want to climb or do we want to slide? And then you follow their lead and you do it with them.
Yep. Doing it with them is so key. And then I think talking about them, that sounds weird. Talking about how they feel before doing the sensory activities, how they feel during the activities, how they feel afterwards, how this specific activity makes them feel. Does swinging make you feel happy? Does swinging make you feel scared? What does it feel in your tummy? Those types of questions. And that way you can kind of work on the before and after. Like before we started this, I was feeling angry. Now I'm feeling a little calmer. I was feeling really anxious about, this conversation I had to have with a kid at school. And now that we've incorporated these activities and talked about it, I feel a lot better. Those types of conversations can be really helpful.
Yeah, we always want to add the emotions into the sensory activities so that the child can start to understand, oh, when I swing, I feel good. And then in the future, you can start incorporating it and saying, hey, do you're feeling anxious right now. What are the things that make you feel good? And they can pull that back from their memory and be like, oh, swinging makes me feel good. I'm going to go swing right now. And there's your sensory diet.
Yep.
Bam. That's it. That's
Boom.
it. There you go. Magic pill. Just kidding.
There are no magic pills here.
There's no magic pills. There's no quick fixes. It's a process. So we're walking you through the process.
Yeah. It's just learning about your brain and what it needs and what it craves.
And try not to rush it.
Exactly.
It is a process that takes time and consistency.
If you are lucky enough to have the same sensory goggle feature that Jess and I have now.
Lucky? You call that lucky?
Yeah,
I don't know.
We're going to say
that.
lucky right now.
Yeah.
And you can't take off your sensory goggles and everything you see is, oh, that's a sensory activity. Oh, well, yep, that's a little sensory overload. Oh, yep, well, then sensory seeking. You just can't not see it. You can't unsee it, right?
Can't.
It's like W sitting. You can't unsee it once you see it.
Once you see it.
Yep.
Okay, the next tip is to teach through modeling. So our kids tend to watch us more than they listen to us, which means they're going to imitate what you do more than they're going to do what you say. So if you can start incorporating these, sensory diet strategies into your own routine
and verbiage,
then they are more likely to copy you. So if you are starting to feel anxious over a situation and your child is with you, you can start talking about it and you can say, man, I'm starting to feel a little anxious. My face feels kind of hot. My palms are sweaty. I think I need to use a tool to feel better. And then you can pick whatever your tool is. I need to go outside and take some deep breaths. And, your child can maybe come with you, or they can watch you through the window as you use your strategy for a couple of minutes, and then you can come back in and, hopefully you feel a little bit better and you can communicate that, oh, I used my tool or whatever you want to call it, and I feel less anxious now and I can keep going throughout my day. And they can watch you and see you do this. And the more consistent you are, not only is it going to make you feel better because you're using strategies for yourself, but it's going to start carrying over to your child and they're going to start doing it too.
That's the goal. That's the ultimate goal. We love putting the zones of regulation up. We have a visual in our house right now. And this is what I always recommend and always have recommended to clients. Put it up on your fridge where everyone can see it. Everyone in the entire family should be using that same verbiage. I'm feeling like I'm in the red zone. I need to go take a break. I need to go upstairs. I need to swing. I need to go for a walk. I need to take a break. And coming back, I'm feeling a lot better. I'm in the green zone. There's no shame. There's no, being in the red zone means you're bad. It's just, this is how we're feeling, and this is how we're going to get back to that green zone so we can continue to learn and play and be happy. And I pulled that. We had ours taped on the wall, and I literally ripped it off the wall yesterday. And I was like, how are you feeling?
Did you say, I'm in the red zone? You're like, I'm in the red zone right now.
Yes, that's exactly what I said.
Oh, it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, using the visuals is so helpful for so many kids.
Yeah.
For sure.
I love modeling. I love incorporating that. Also making it a part of your daily routine. So you just know when you wake up, when your child wakes up, they're going to do their sensory diet. This is part of the day. We're going to do a yoga flow that wakes our body up. Find one on YouTube. Have them find one that they want to do. Just make it a part of the day. And if you use a visual schedule, if you're using a visual routine, if you're using any sort of chart for them to see, make sure that's on there. Give them the control to choose, if they're old enough, to choose what they want to do, when they are going to do it, what order of operations they're going to do it. As much control as you can give your child to do this, to take responsibility for it, if they're able to, give it to them and say, you choose, this is your choice. Talk about how they feel before and after, all the things that we've already mentioned.
Also, sensory diet activities don't have to be these like perfectly therapeutic activities.
No.
I already mentioned this in the beginning, but part of your sensory diet could be getting a drink of water, eating a crunchy snack, and going outside. Meeting those biological needs, getting fresh air, fresh light, getting grounded can be so effective, sometimes more effective
Honestly,
than something like
going upside down over a therapy ball
or deep pressure brushing. Like sometimes those
Take it
simple
back to the basics.
activities, those basic activities are going to be even more effective. So like Rachel said, if you can incorporate it into the daily routine, a morning walk and an evening walk as part of the sensory diet.
Without sunglasses on.
I know, my
barefoot.
least favorite thing. I love sunglasses.
I know.
Yeah, I think so often we overthink sensory diets.
I think people feel intimidated by them.
Sure.
And the term sensory diet sounds very formal and scary, but really the term for us is just doing what your sensory system, your nervous system needs in order to feel its best, in order to be well modulated.
Yep. So if you're a parent listening to this and you've been struggling to get your child to participate in those sensory activities, just scrap it and start over.
Scrap it.
And focus on what your child enjoys and model your own sensory strategies. Find the verbiage that you want to be using consistently, the verbiage that your child wants to use, and just go slow and consistent.
If you have an older child who is learning about their sensory system and you want to incorporate some more like activities, you could use one of our sensory checklists and you could go through it together. You could each have your own, print them out. I'm going to go through mine. We're going to talk about them. You go through yours, for teenagers and things like that. That can be really helpful. That's something that I always love to do with my older clients too. Like, this is what this means. This is what your body's telling you. This is what you need when you feel like this. And if you're a therapist, going through that with your student or with your client during the session and then communicating that to the family afterwards is
super helpful.
Yep. Yeah.
We do have a full digital course on learning about the 8 sensory systems, learning about SPD, and learning how to create personalized sensory diets, because no 2 sensory diets are going to look the same, but also we teach that sensory needs can change and how to create different types of sensory diets for different situations. So we do have a full course where you can learn more and you get an entire activity toolbox. So that is available to you to learn more on this topic.
And it is AOTA approved, so you can get those continuing education units. Bada bing, bada boom. If you are concerned about your child's ability to get through their day, if their sensory needs are impacting their ability to just function on a daily basis, get an OT evaluation, find someone trained in sensory, primitive reflexes. When in doubt, rule it out.
Yep. If this episode was helpful, let us know by sending us a message, letting us know you listened by tagging us on social media. If you're watching us on YouTube, because we are on video now, make sure you subscribe to our channel, like this video, leave a comment, all the things.
Yep. And with that, we'll plan on seeing you next week.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much for listening to All Things Sensory by Harkla.
If you want more information on anything mentioned in the show, head over to harkla.co/podcast to get the show notes.
If you have any follow-up questions, the best place to ask those is in the comments on the show notes or message us on our Instagram account, which is at Harkla_family or at All Things Sensory Podcast. If you just search Harkla, you'll find us there.
Like we mentioned before, our podcast listeners get 10% off their first order at Harkla. Whether it's for one of our digital courses or one of our sensory swings, the discount code SENSORY will get you 10% off. That's SENSORY.
Head to harkla.co/sensory to use that discount code right now.
We are so excited to work together to help create confident kids all over the world. While we make every effort to share correct information, we're still learning.
We will double check all of our facts, but realize that medicine is a constantly changing science and art.
One doctor or therapist may have a different way of doing things from another.
We are simply presenting our views and opinions on how to address common sensory challenges, health-related difficulties, and what we have found to be beneficial that will be as evidence-based as possible.
By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or your child.
Consult your child's pediatrician or therapist for any medical issues that he or she may be having.
This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast.
Thanks so much for listening.